Harvie, and this is the second video in my series on creating and drawing tags for VTScada version 11 and 11.1. Now in the first video, we got as far as creating the communication tags, the TCP and Modbus compatible, in order to talk to this PLC demonstration box. We also created two I/O tags, digital status and digital control, and we're saying that those are going to be for a motor. Now, we're about to have a problem in that there are 4 motors attached to this demonstration unit. I'm going to need some way to keep my tags organized so I don't lose track of which one is which. Now in the old days, we used to use the area property of the tags to do that, and we still do. However, we also now have this concept called a context tag. And a context tag is anything you want it to be, but it provides context to other tags, encapsulating them together so that all of the I/O for each motor is grouped together. Now, it could be that a context is for a piece of equipment, could be geographic area. You could have a context for a county, a city. You can have a context for anything. We're also going to add just a tiny bit of programming magic so that when I get to the stage of adding the remaining 3 motors, it's going to be much, much faster and easier than it was to add the first one. Let's see how it's done. Here are the tags as we left them at the end of video 1. I have a digital control and a digital status tag for my first motor. Now there's going to be an alarm tag added as well, and I'm also going to repeat all of this again and again and again. So to save time, at this point I'm going to stop and think, let's put this into a context so that we can create motors rather than all the I/O individually for each motor. So I click at the level of driver, say new child, and this time the type is going to be context. I'm going to call this motor 1 because this is going to be my first context instance. So motor 1, the area can be, well, whatever I want to call it. At this point, it might make sense to step away from the system area, so perhaps the motors area. And the description. Now, one extra piece of information, which we don't see in most ID tabs, is a space for the type. I'm going to turn a motor into a new type of tag, so I can build new motors rather than individual I/O for motors. You do not need to do this if you never plan to turn it into a type, but in most cases, it's a very handy feature. So I'm going to call this the motor type. The next thing that a context tag is able to have is its own set of configuration properties. So if I open the Settings tab, I see it starts out with an empty list. Context tags are completely under your control as far as configuration. You get to decide what properties they're going to have. Now, in my case, I'm looking at the I/O addresses, and I notice that for each motor, all of the I/O addresses simply increase by 1 all the way along. So if I had the ability to add some sort of a base address to the motor number, I could use that in the I/O configuration of the child tags. So let's add a new property called the motor number. The first one is going to be valued at 1, and this is going to simply be motor ID number. You can add as many properties as are useful for the context that you're building. Now, if I were building a context for a location, I would probably also want to click on the Add Site Properties button, and that would fill in properties for latitude, longitude, and other mapping features that would make it very easy to draw this context on one of my site maps. Now, all of my motors are going to go into the same physical location, more or less, so I'm not going to bother with that right now. We'll see that in another video. Other properties you might add could be even as something as simple as maintenance information or serial numbers, anything at all that you want to record as part of this overall construction. Let's stop here with motor number. And now I have my new context. Now the two I/O tags we created earlier need to be moved into that context. So I can do that by selecting both of them, right-click, and do a cut. Then on motor 1, I'm going to right-click and paste those tags as children. Now it warns me before I move these tags that I may need to update references. I would need to do that if I had calculations, expressions, built into the tag configuration fields, which at the moment I don't. Anything that's used within VTScada will look after itself. So I acknowledge this, that yes, I do want to move those tags, and now they've moved down to be within the context of motor number 1. Looking at the driver level, I only see that I have motors. Now then, here comes the little bit of configuration programming that's going to make it much easier to build the next 3 motors. I'm going to start by opening my motor control tag, open its properties, and I'm going to go back to the I/O tab. The address at the moment is hardwired in here is 4101. Now this is within motor number 1, so what I can do is build an expression. If this was 4100 plus the 1 for the motor number, that would bring me to my address, and then every other one would follow. So I'm going to right-click on the address field and add what we call a snapshot expression. It's called snapshot because it's evaluated only when the tag starts. Expression because it's a bit of programming. And what this is going to be is backslash motor number plus 4100, which gives me motor 1, the value was originally 1. 1 plus 4100 should bring me to my address here, and then 2 will take us onwards to all of the remaining motors. Now if I did this correctly, when I click on OK, this field will turn blue and the result of the calculation will go in here. Now be very, very careful when you do this. If the field doesn't turn blue and you see the expression written out, it's not a snapshot expression. It will not work. I should be able to hover over it, and only when I hover, then I'll see a pop-up tooltip telling me the motor number, or the expression value. Okay, let's repeat that in the second tag, and I'll go a little bit more quickly. So properties, I/O, right-click, add snapshot expression, backslash motor number plus 4100. The backslash is to make sure that it's going to look up to the parent to find that property. Now it will work in any case, but if you said something like the area property, you'd actually want to say ... backslash, so we got the area of the parent, not the area of the current tag that also has an area property. Click on OK, and the addresses continue to work. The values are still reading in. Nothing broke. Now, having done that much, I'm now going to right-click on the parent context, and I'm going to turn this into a new type. Now, it gives me the option to add in a number of pre-existing drawing methods. In most cases, many of these you might not need, especially the ones relating to mapping, since this particular tag will never be mapped. But to save time, I'm simply going to leave them all there and click on OK. And it's done. Now, when I go up to my driver, I can say a brand new child, and the type is going to be a motor type. So in my list of types, I now have the kind that I created. This is going to be motor 2 in the second area. And in the other parameters list, I now see that I've got a space to enter in the new ID value. Let's put that in and see what happens. Motor 2 exists. It automatically gets the 2 tags, and I see the addresses use the programming expression I created, and they are automatically now pointed at 4102. And I can repeat this. Just a few more times, changing the motor ID in each case. Motor 3 is now existing, and all of the I/O has been created for me. And finally, motor 4. So as you can see, having built a context and added just a little bit of programming within this snapshot, you can save an enormous amount of time in your configuration. Now, we still need to add the alarm tags. In the next video, we'll see how to modify our definition of a context to add something that we thought of later in at the time that we thought of it.